A blessed day, everyone. Welcome to BSM TV. I would like to welcome you to this special program, the midweek study, as we study God's Word. Today, without wasting much of your time, we're going to study about why rebellion is incurable. And we'll be reading from the book called Messenger of the Lord by Sister White. And it talks about the reasons why someone might not understand or chooses not to understand what God is saying. And most of the time you will discover that it is actually after someone sees a non-duty that he's supposed to do and he deters himself from doing it. Now, we are going to be reading this book from page 274, paragraph 1. It says, it's called MOL 274.1. It says, closely connected to the principle that the heart human desire determines the way the head perceives the truth is the phenomenon of rebellion. So the head, how someone perceives the truth, can also lead into rebellion. We'll read further, and here it says, rebellion means that a person who once knew the truth to some degree chooses no longer to perceive it as truth. Now, so the first aspect of rebellion, we have been told here that it is when someone in his head perceives the truth. So everyone, when new truth comes, is either you fall onto the side of rebellion or of a good servant. So what do we mean? How do you perceive the truth when it comes? That's the first step. If you choose to refuse the truth in regard of ample evidence to show that it is the truth, then the way your head perceives the truth can be taken as rebellion. But the second aspect here that Sister White is talking about is of someone who once knew and practiced the truth, and that person now chooses no longer to believe it as truth. That can be termed also as rebellion. And here it says, some personal internal conflict has arisen that is in conflict with the obligation of truth. So something might have come up that is in contrary to the obligation or what truth requires the person to do. Yes, we can give an example of the Sabbath. Someone might have a job that wants him to work on the Sabbath, and then he knows that the Sabbath is of the Lord, but he chooses not to do it because of work. Now you see, to God, that is rebellion. It's no longer sinning. The difference between sinning and rebellion, sinning can be forgiven. And rebellion, sometimes you discover that rebellion is willfully saying, I don't want to do this. Although God says this, I will not do it. So that is termed rebellion. So when someone is diverting from a non-duty, God terms it rebellion. And especially if the person once knew the truth and something has arisen, that is first class rebellion. And he says, in terms of the great controversy, such persons have made their own judgment the Lord of their lives. So instead of having the Lord of Lords ruling in our lives, now your decisions, your judgments are now ruling your life. So this aspect of rebellion is hard because that person who allows his judgment to be the Lord of everything that he does, he doesn't consider that there is something that God might want him to do or to know. He is a very, very dangerous person, and that rebellion is almost incurable. And he says here, For all of us, we must move from the limited knowledge of the past to the fuller knowledge of unfolding truth. At those moments, we should abide by consciences and move on, with the head and heart united and responding to the higher demand of the truth. So what happens with God? God normally, when he's sending his truth, he sends it not all wholesome at the same time. He sends bits by bits by bits. Now, rebellion always comes in sometimes when there is a new duty that someone is asked to do. But for most of us, what God expects is to move on with the limited knowledge that we have. So the children of Israel, when they were coming out of Egypt, they were not shown the whole plan from leaving Egypt that night. They were not shown even the Red Sea. They were not shown even the spies, the Moabites who were waiting in the way. They were not shown all that. What God told them, you are going to a land full of milk and honey. And that was the one thing that was occupying their mind. When they started on that move, they moved on with a limited knowledge, which God always does. And at every step, God increases the knowledge or increases the light. And that should help us to be bold in the things of God. And when the increased light comes, what the person needs to do is to step onto the light, regardless of whatever consequence. Now, it says here, if you have found that this is truth, you need to move with your heart and your head. A lot of times, we don't move with our heart, we move with our head. And when the heart is now questioned, we are seen to rebel, right? It says, the committed Christian makes a habit of responding to the non-duty. So the non-duty, when the message of flesh eating came, a lot of people saw that this message is from God. Yeah. But where is that message of now? It has been recanted by most of the people in the church. Why? Because they are not moving. They know it is a non-duty. To be a Sabbath keeper, you need to discard all these flesh meats. But they want it. So do you see where the spirit of rebellion comes in? When they do not move in the non-duty that God has given them. They may come up with reason to say, why this person in the Bible ate, but they know that they are just looking for hands to hook their doubt. But the truth is, they are supposed to be non-flesh eating. And it says here, rebellion, however, is a turning away from non-duty. So when you turn away from a non-duty, yeah, a lot of people know that flesh eating is not allowed. When you're praying, you need to kneel because the word of God says it. 3SM, is it 2SM, page 311? You can read all that. You know that this is the truth. So once you have read it and you have seen it is clear, what God is waiting is for a positive response. But when you say no from non-duty, from a truth, then it becomes rebellion. So it says, rebellion, however, is a turning away from a non-duty, from that advancing light, right? Rebelling at the increasing demand of the lordship of truth. So when the truth comes in, it comes in with the requirements. It's when the truth moved on from William Miller to Sister White, they were keeping the first day of the week. But when Sister White came in, they were supposed to move into the seventh day Sabbath, right? But a lot of people who were in the first day Adventist, they didn't move to the seventh day Adventist. Why? Because they failed to move with the truth from its increasing and advancing light. And most of the rebellion is because there's an inconvenience, because the truth always come with an increasing demand. Yeah, an increasing demand. So when they moved, they saw the truth of the Sabbath. It was saying, do not work, do not do this, do not do that, do not. And the whole world at that time was keeping a certain day, which was not Sabbath. So you can see the U-turn was a big one, and most people were not ready to do it. Now it says, no one other than the person involved knows when the first rebellion thought arises. So a lot of times we may see people living the truth and think, what happened? But the person who is in that rebellion knows when the first thought arose. So it says, neither does one know when someone else crosses the line in letting thoughtful reflections become rationalization. Yeah? But rationalizers who seek reasons to justify their reluctance to accept all the implications of the truth know when that intoxicating spirit of rebellion takes over. It then becomes a slippery slope. So there's a precipice where they know that moment was the turning point, and everything now becomes a slippery slope. And you know, when it is a slippery slope, to come back again up, it is a very, very difficult. That's why God is saying, rebellion is incurable. You are on the precipice like that. You need wings to come back. So it says, but the person who is involved, some people might be following the person who has rebelled, but they don't know that what caused it. They might be following faithfully, but they don't know what caused all this commotion, all this backsliding. Because from that non-duty, when that candlestick is off, yeah, the non-duty is off, what comes? Fables, all the heresies come in to take place where the truth was supposed to be taken into practice. Now, it says here, neither does one know when someone else crosses the line in letting thoughtful reflection become rationalization. But rationalizers who seek reasons to justify their reluctance to accept the implication of non-truth when that intoxicating spirit of rebellion takes over, it then becomes a slippery slope. Now you remember the story of the 10 spies. God had said, go and spy the land, because this land, in Deuteronomy chapter 11, you shall pass over Jordan and you shall inherit that land. Now, this is the command from the first day God took them out of Egypt. He said, you are going into the land that is over Jordan. Now, when the spies went, to make sure that they do not enter, there's people who did not want to enter among the spies. They will make sure that not only them, but everyone else they can take should not enter. But it is only them who knew when that spirit of rebellion. They knew first that God had said, go over Jordan and what? And put on and take over the land, isn't it? They knew that statement came from God and from no one else. But they started coming up with reasons. And if you read the Bible, it says they brought up an evil report, which means they were lying. Here we have seen this, the land swallows up its people, whatever. They stood until the whole congregation started crying because of their reports. You can see when someone is have that intoxicating spirit, he is a massive influencer, and they lie a lot. And that's why the Spirit of God here is saying it becomes a slippery slope. Instead of saying, for sure, look at the grapes. This is the evidence. Whatever they were saying, he had no evidence. The evidence was the grapes, the land, the fruits they brought. And they say, indeed, it is a land that floweth with milk. But, do you understand? Oh yes, the truth, I know the truth is in the 50 angels message, but, do you understand? So, God knows that it's now a slippery slope. So you see why God said even all of them cannot enter except the 20 and below, because he had no place for these people. They were determined not to enter. Even if he had forced them to go in, they were looking for a way to go back to Egypt. So when there was that way, God will say, no more, I cannot, I can't. And you would understand if you read and read more, you would understand that the reason why God would not allow them to go back to Egypt and making sure they perish in the wilderness, it was actually his grace. Because once the Spirit of God was taken out away from their protection, and God says, I'll just let them go. He says there were people, the devil was just ready to consume them. To consume them and make sure the name of God is what is blamed for everything that comes after that. So God made sure they just die like a natural death or something else that will take them in the wilderness, so that it would appear as a natural cause, but it was actually the grace of God for saving his name from humiliation. Now this day, God is saying, rebellion, once you are in that slippery slope, there's no way back. Like the 10 spies, God says they are no longer going into the land of Canaan, because he had seen that their rebellion from a non-duty, God, from them, all this time, he has taken them out, and they were walking. And now when they are at the borders, that's when they are saying, no, we cannot enter because of someone, not God, someone, anarchy, and whatever. We should be very careful, especially people who want to listen to people, because those 10 spies were preachers. You can tell that they preached the whole night and the whole day until the whole congregation cried the whole night and the whole day and whole night, crying from that sermon. And the worst thing you can see is the persecution that follows. You can tell the Spirit of God had moved away from them. So he says here, when Sister White in 1980, she was asked by this pastor, in reflecting on the experience of Pastor Stephen McCullough in 1890, Ellen White wrote, I question whether genuine rebellion is ever curable. She is questioning, is genuine rebellion ever curable? Now you read the story of the 10 spies, you would think, okay, right, the children that followed after, they would understand that God meant business when he said, go over Jordan. But you see that same story happening, yeah, when the children of Gad, Reuben, yeah, and half the tribe of Manasseh, saying, we will not pass over that Jordan. You can find that story in Numbers 32 from verse 1. The same thing happened. That caused not their fathers not to inherit Canaan. The younger ones, when they were near Jordan, came to Moses, Moses, can we not? Can we not? No, they went to Joshua now. Moses said, oh, I was dead. Can we not pass over this Jordan? We want, if you read, it will say from verse 1 on Numbers chapter 32, it says, we have found green pastures. We have found a good land for cattle, for our children, they gave some reasons. But God had said, pass over Jordan and inherit that land. What did they do? No, they don't want to pass over. They want to remain on the other side of Jordan. And they say, we'll build our own altar. We'll continue doing what you are doing over there, but we'll do it also on our side. Do you understand? But because a minute they were allowed, they erected an image which was to serve as an example of the worship that was done in Shiloh when everyone passed. But you discover that God was not happy. Of course, he allowed them to do it. He didn't kill them at that time, but they were taken. If you read in the First Chronicles chapter 5, from verse 25 to 26, they were taken by the Assyrian captivity. That's when God remembered them. Take everything, went into the Assyrian captivity. Why? Because there has. I'll read this verse because that is very important. Why God had, after giving them what they wanted, is First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 25. It says, and they transgressed against the Lord of their fathers, and went warring after the gods of the people of the land, whom God destroyed before them. Do you see? God had delivered them from Egypt and from all the people of the land, but they wanted to remain behind, and they said, we don't want to possess that land, and they went warring after the customs of the people. And God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria, and the spirit of Tilgath-Pilsener, king of Assyria, and he carried them away, even the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh, and brought them unto Hala and Haba and Hara, to the river Gozan, unto this day. Do you understand? So they were taken. They were their fathers. If you read Joshua saying, your fathers did the same thing when we were at the borders. Now you're repeating this. And God here is telling us, if their fathers wanted to go back to Egypt, their children now, and the same spirit. So rebellion is not curable. Rebellion is not curable. And you can see God has had to make sure they are taken by the king of who? Of Syria. So we go back here. It says, Sister White is asking, is genuine rebellion ever be curable? She says here, the issue in rebellion is primarily attitude. An attitude that determines and governs the way a person looks at information. So when someone, if you take the issue of David and Nathan, Nathan comes to David in a way that David pronounced his punishment. There's someone in your village who has got 10 sheep, and one of his neighbors got one. And when visitors came, he took the person who's got one killed for the visitors. What did you do? He said, that person should die. Because a lot of people who are rebellious, they don't wish others well. That person should die by I don't know, death. You understand? And Nathan said, it is you, Lord. It is you, my Lord. That's when everything what daunted to him, that he is a sinner. But to him, before that experience, he thought himself a very wise person, a very, very wise person. Now, that's what rebellion does. It makes you think that you are a very wise person. But I want you to understand what this spirit is, this scripture is saying. It is dealing, rebellion is dealing primarily with attitude of people. So the attitude that David had after being shown where he's wrong, that attitude determined whether he was rebellious or not. Now, he says, attitude that determines and governs the way a person looks at information. So the first thing, when someone tells you are wrong, is to accept that you are wrong. Once the acceptation, you don't accept that, then everything becomes wrong. So the attitude that you take after that, just imagine if Nathan had come and said, Lord, you have taken a wife of Uriah and you have killed him, and you are responsible. 9 out of 10 times you can see that he was going to have the same attitude, even if Nathan had to spice it up into a story. Yeah. So some people say, Nathan had to make sure he didn't just go straight to the sea. But the attitude, God knew his attitude. Some people need sharp to tell him that you are a sinner. You have done this and that and that and that. Because God, what he wants to uproot is the attitude. The attitude. So the attitude that David had, God knew his attitude. That's why he had to make sure it is in a story. Now, he says, rebellion happens when a person changes allegiance, a change that he or she may not recognize intellectually. So the person, the rebellion is when you change allegiance. You are changing teams. You were in team A, and team A was fighting team B. Now you are in team B, fighting team A. That's the rebellion at its verity. So God says, rebellion happens when a person changes allegiance, a change that he or she may not recognize intellectually. You may not recognize it and think, everything is well. But to God, you have changed allegiances. So, Lord is no longer on your side, but you are on the other side fighting the Lord. That is a bad rebellion. And he says, Korah's rebellion against Moses as an example of an incurable rebellion, even as she did Satan's rebellion in heaven. The anatomy of rebellion is this: jealousy gives rise to envy, and envy to rebellion. The heart of rebellion is self-willed, set against the expressed will of God. The appeal of a rebellion is that people have been deprived of their liberty and independence. Everywhere, look at where people rebel. It is people have been deprived of their liberty and their independence. Yeah, even when the church says we want to eat meat, why? Who is Lord? Who is saying that we should not eat meat? We should have our liberty and an exercise of our mind. Yeah, not to take some words from some people. That's why they don't want Sister White. It says, The appeal of a rebellion is that people have been deprived of their liberty and independence, and that relief will be found by joining the rebellion. You know, some people who join the rebellion, they turn spies. If you would read, not all of them were rebellious. They joined in hoping for this liberty so that they can be free and exercise their own judgment as well. And yeah, they can be free. But they didn't know that that was their last day in the camp of God. They were not to set foot in the promised land. Now he says, the methodology of rebellion is to whisper half-truths and to dissemble when confronted. Those whom the rebels oppose are vilified and represented in the blackest of character. So the problem with rebellion is of half-truths. Half-truths. If you see someone saying, oh, someone told me this and I don't want to say the name, know that it's half-truths. They don't want to come to the truth, because if you really want to come to the knowledge of truth, you say, let's sort this out. Who said what? If I have to apologize, I will apologize. If I don't have to, if let's unmask the devil. You understand? Let's see where the devil is lying so that he doesn't go in between us. That's where you see someone is in the Spirit of God. But if you see someone say, I don't want to talk about it and I'll just keep quiet, I'm alone, that is a rebellious spirit. You can entertain me how many times you want, but you will never come to the unity that God wants. He says here, the methodology of rebellion. So now we know, when you want to see someone is rebellious, the methodology is like the methodology of cooking a cake. It's not different. It's the same way you cook a cake. But for rebellion, it's actually the same way. If you see someone saying half-truths, yeah, know for sure that rebellion has started. And to dissemble when confronted, yeah. When you confront it, what do they say? I don't want to talk about it. Okay, we'll see it another time. Whatever. That is the person who is being used by the devil. He says, those who rebel, whom the rebels oppose, are vilified and represented in the blackest character. Yeah? Why is it that rebellion is not easily cured by the light of truth? This is a question. Why is it not easily cured by the light of truth? Because incurable rebellion rests on a refusal to submit to divine authority. Now you may be thinking, why are we not doing this and that? Why are we not coming into unity of faith? Why is it, of all this truth that God has given us, we should be united front. We should be doing this. Why are we not doing it? It is because when someone is in rebellion to the truth of God, yeah, he is not rebelling against you or me. He is refusing to submit to divine authority. So you may be wondering, why is Pastor Moyo not, coming? I can't feel him. It is because I am not submitting to divine authority. Once I submit to divine authority, is an easy game. Once you see that we cannot blend, we cannot, unite. There's someone who is not submitting to God full-heartedly, and then you can start to see that there's commotion everywhere. But once that person submits to God, the love becomes genuine. You understand? The unity becomes genuine. That's why in the church today, people are fighting each other. Why? Because some are eating flesh, some are not. Some are doing this, some are kneeling, some are not kneeling, some are, some are into all these days, some are not. Then there is commotion because the spirits don't agree. The spirits are not agreeing. Why? Because someone has got another Lord and another has got God. You understand? So he says here, because incurable rebellion rests on a refusal to submit to divine authority. Because pride of opinion rises up to shed the light of truth. Pride of opinion now comes in. In Korah's rebellion, his followers fondly cherished the hope that a new order of things was to be established. That's the major thing. A new order of things. It's like a person who's divorcing. They think that the person who's going to fix all their troubles is finding a new wife or finding a new husband. Is going to make sure that they live happily ever after. If they are divorcing, look at them. They are ready to move on to a greener pasture, but they don't know that the only thing that can fix everything is themselves. They need to fix themselves first before they can move on to the next chapter. Fix yourself. Yeah. So here he's saying the people in Korah's rebellion, they were hoping for a new order. When they rebelled against Moses, they wanted a new order, Korah taking over. You know, understand? So that they can be a good leadership. But it's not about leadership, it's about you. You can change leadership. As long as you are the same person, you will be rebellious in everything. That's why in another book, Sister White, it says it's not about the content that someone reads that makes him an heretic. Even if you give them a newspaper, that person is heretic. He will take things to extreme. So it's not about the Bible, it's not about my writings, it's about the person himself. So you may think, oh, why is he rebellious? Even if you take them to a football field, that person is a rebellious someone. You will never submit to anyone, let alone to God. Do you understand? So this is why rebellion is incurable. So now to finish off this lesson, it says here, in Korah's rebellion, his followers fondly cherished the hope of a new order of things that was about to be established, in which praise would be submitted for reproof and ease for anxiety and conflict. It is hardly possible for men to offer greater insult to God than to despise and to reject the instrumentalities he would use for their salvation. So this is our last reading. It says, people like to be told lovely things, isn't it? They don't want to be told reproof. So when they rebel, it is because they don't want reproof. They are looking for a new order of things where reproof can be substituted to what? Reproof can be substituted to praise. Yeah? Just praise them. Whenever they don't want to be highlighted for their weaknesses. But God is not going to be doing that. He's going to highlight all our weaknesses until we are into the kingdom. Before that, our weaknesses will be what? Will be shown. The torch is torching everyone. God says, I'm searching Jerusalem with what? With candles. So that if you are searching with candles, your eyes wide open. So God is wide opening his eyes to see and perfect all the people. So when he sees something that is wrong in us, he is going to highlight it. And it will be a bitter pill to swallow, because we don't know what is in our heart until it is put out there. When God puts out a test in front of us, our attitude will determine whether we will be rebellious or acceptable in the things of God. So may God bless us all in this study that we have. It's a short study, but I hope it will empower us to know that whenever people talk about you, whenever people say about you, it's not always bad. Sometimes it's better to look at yourself and see, what can I do? It's not about people. It is God who is trying to highlight it. Not all things that are said about me is bad, as much as I might view it as bad, but actually it's something that is coming to make sure I change my ways and be perfect in front of God. So everything that you hear people talking about you, first of all, check, what have I done wrong? Don't say why. Check what you have done wrong. And if it is a fact and something that you know for sure, don't try to defend it. Fall on your knees and ask God for the power to overcome sin and temptation so that we may be saved. May God bless us all, and may we meet again on this channel for more truth. Blessed week, brethren.